Welcome to the wonderful world of wine. We are your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio, and you can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the wonderful world of wine. We are Kim and Mark. How are you today, Kim?
I'm very well, thank you. Very excited to talk to you about all things in the wine world, as always.
We always have stuff we're finding, and today's the same old stuff, Kim. We found some articles out there on the internet that are trending, and we want to talk to the listeners about it and give our 2 cents. The first article was about YouTube, Kim. Is YouTube the way to attract younger audiences to wine? First, I have to ask you, Kim.
Go ahead.
I mean, our show is on YouTube. We just post the episodes, but do you post anything on YouTube or do you use YouTube at all?
I don't, because I'm an old fogey. I think one of the first things that jumped out at me about this article is how demographics and what age you're trying to appeal to really does matter when you are trying to either market your program or your business or whatnot, and how you want to get information across to your audience. And I do use YouTube all the time for lots of things, but not necessarily for wine, because wine is something that I know so much about that I feel like there's most of the things that are on YouTube are what I'm going to go to if I need like an intro, how to shape a baguette, or I don't necessarily know how to prune my raspberry plants, that kind of a thing, but not necessarily for like really upper level stuff. So yes, I do use YouTube for those sort of educational things, but not for the things that I am the expert in.
Yeah, the age thing, I think you're right on with. I mean, this was in Meningers. Is that how you say it? Meningers International?
I've always pronounced it meningers. I don't know if that is
Meningers?
correct or not.
Well, I'll say
You say
Meningers.
tomato, I say
Yeah.
tomato.
And their whole thing is, why are wine professionals avoiding YouTube? So I guess we are avoiding you. I mean, we put content on it for the show. And like you, Kim, I search a lot of things on YouTube, how to do things. I do search some things for pronunciation because, I'm a big non-pronunciating, right? And there are a few individuals I follow. But I guess social media in general is age groups use different things. And I guess the age group we want to get drinking wine are big on YouTube. They gave some numbers that the 25 to 34-year-olds, 21.3% are on YouTube. That's the largest user group. The second largest user group is 35 to 44, and then 18 to 24 is 15.5%. So that age group is really the group we're trying to get interested in wine, and YouTube is the way to do it. So the wine school doesn't use YouTube?
Not yet. Soon, no. Very soon.
So, I mean, there's an example. I mean, we're both in the industry and really don't. I mean, we use it for the show, just posting episodes, but we're not creating Kim and Mark videos, putting it up there.
But I also think it comes down to not only who is your audience, but who are your creators. And if your creators aren't comfortable with a certain platform, then you're not going to get that content. So the youngest person we have working at the wine school is 30.
Yeah.
So we don't have a 22-year-old who just got into wine and has been used on platforms like you who understand it intuitively. We've got a bunch of older folks who we're much more comfortable with Instagram and Facebook. So I think that that's part of the issue too, is that if you, the creator, are not necessarily comfortable with the platform, you're not going to go out of your way to put stuff up there, because not only do you not necessarily know what the appropriate content will be, you also don't know or don't understand how valuable it can be. And I think that that is one of the issues with those of us who are of an older generation. I mean, you and I are both Gen Xers, so we are maybe focusing more on platforms that appeal to our generation and don't necessarily want to buy into something that we don't really see how it will work for us.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not very video savvy. So like I would need somebody to do it for me, because I'm not a marketing person. I'm a wine geek. So like understanding not only what content to create, but also how to get it out there in a way that makes it appealing for people who are 22 to 35 is very daunting because I just don't know how to do it correctly.
That's a good point about the age of the content creators. I've always heard on social media, video is the way you're found. You have to do video. In this article, they were saying wine writing is irrelevant to younger audiences
Mm-hmm.
as they're skeptical about the written word.
Yeah.
And that the wine industry needs more video because people can hide behind their words. But if you're doing a video, you're seeing the person, you're not hiding behind what you're saying because you're putting yourself out there. So, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I have to say that the people who I have gotten to know in the wine industry who are of that younger generation, those folks who are in their 20s and their early 30s, they are the creators of wine. They are the sons and daughters who have taken over their parents' winery. They are getting their hands dirty in the vineyard. Maybe they are entry level marketing or whatever in the tasting room, but they are busy all the time doing the stuff, to get
Right.
wine created. They don't necessarily have time to be making videos. So I think that that's a bit of a disconnect too, is that the people who are of the age that this is what they either know or it's their age group who is attracted to this kind of stuff, they're too busy actually making wine and doing the actual business of wine. So, I mean, maybe that is an incorrect assumption on my part, but I feel like that the younger folks who I have met, they're really busy getting their hands dirty. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
I recently had a Spanish wine, Juan Gil, and it had a QR code on it. And I thought, oh, great, I'm going to have the tech sheet on here. When I opened that QR code, it was actually a YouTube video of the winemaker in the winery, in the vineyards. So that was my first thing when I was reading this. I'd say, wow, I just found this out when I had a YouTube moment from a wine. So maybe people are looking at that a little bit more out there. There was some other numbers I just wanted to let the listeners know.
Oh, good. We can
That
come back to the QR code thing because I think
yeah,
that that's a whole nother conversation.
yeah. And I want to also get back to your point about how we use it. But just a couple of quick numbers. The monthly users worldwide of YouTube, 2.49 billion, and 60% are Gen Z that learn from YouTube over books. So that is the audience that needs to be captured to get them excited about wine. And it's huge. So that was the whole point of this. And then they're saying it's more engaging than Instagram or social media influencers on like Instagram.
And
So
I have to
thought that
say,
was,
as the parent of teenagers, this next generation who are between the ages of, I don't know, 12 and 20 right now, they will be similar because I cannot get my kids' eyes off of their YouTube. The videos that they watch and the things that they share with their friends. So I think as this next generation of kids comes of age and graduates from high school and goes to college and finally is of drinking age, that video will be just as important, if not more important, to that next generation in the next 10 years.
And getting back to who we follow, you were saying, you look up videos, I look up videos, but I do follow a lot of people on YouTube in the wine world. And a few of them have been guests on our show. I follow the Vero Vino wines. I follow V is for Vino with Vince. I follow Natalie McLean. And I'm sure you follow Wine Folly, right? I
I
mean,
do.
Madeline's huge on all social media.
But the thing about those people is that they're multi-platformed, right?
Yeah,
It's
they're
not
everywhere.
just that their YouTube platform is where you see the majority of their content. You can get to them from a bunch of different places. So like really never watch any Wine Folly videos. I like the website.
Yeah. And it's
And
pretty much the
so
same stuff. It's
it's the same
taken
stuff.
from,
Yeah.
yeah, they just duplicate, put it out on everywhere in case you don't
So
get
maybe
the,
that's the smart way that people are doing it, is that they're hitting different platforms and so capturing people in the way that they are most likely to have their content delivered to them, whether it's by video, whether it's by reading something, whether it's by getting something on Instagram coming up. But yeah, it's really, I feel like it's so complicated at this point in time as somebody who is trying to reach audiences. It's like, ugh. There's so much work behind it. And how do you get that information out there? And then for somebody who is trying to learn about wine, it's like, well, where do you start? Who do you trust? Where do you go?
Yeah, and it seems like YouTube may be something that's starting to come back a little bit. I'm going to mention a name to you, Kim, and I'm sure you followed him, Gary Vaynerchuk, and I'm
Years ago.
sure, yeah.
Didn't he kind of fell off the map though, but okay, I see where you're going with this one. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
so he, now listeners probably heard of him. He was on every talk show at the time. He was from New Jersey. His parents owned a retail store, and he had this thing called the Thunder Show. And it was a YouTube based, and he would just sip wine, spit in a bucket. He had all sorts of wine terms. But then he went into like media marketing or something, kind of fell off the face of the earth, like you
Hmm.
said, was doing online wine ordering. But he just came back on YouTube with the show called Wine Text TV or something, promoting wine again with just sitting down tasting wine. So I was following him on YouTube and he just came back. So
Hmm.
for our listeners, that's someone if you want to get into YouTube to check out.
But I'm guessing that he is not making quite the splash the second time around that he did the first time around.
No, I think he's trying, but he was
I know,
huge,
but it's
huge.
not, and this is kind of like back to my it's about the content and not the platform. It was about the fact that he did something so different that nobody had seen in wine before
Yep.
because
Yep.
he did video, but he also was like irreverent. He was irreverent with wine. He was treating it like, if I think this wine is terrible, I am going to tell you, and I am not going to use any of this like fancy language. We're just going to talk about it as if you don't know anything about wine. And here we are with the glass together. So he really made a splash in a way that was so different from what anybody had ever seen before. And I remember I was working in retail when he kind of came onto the scene, and it was like, anybody heard about this Gary Vaynerchuk guy? And it was
Yeah,
like
it's crazy.
it was all the thing that we were talking about.
Yep.
And then he was like, poof,
Gone. He was
It was
gone.
like, I hate to say he was kind of like a fart in the wind, but he sort of
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because he just
Yeah.
like, he was like, bam, on the scene. And then
Like I said, he was on
where did
all the
Gary
talk
go? I know.
shows. He used to have the thing where he'd eat dirt to tell you
Yeah,
to
it
get the
was like,
dirt
we're gonna go suck on
earthiness.
stones now.
Yeah,
And it was
exactly.
like
But that brings up
so
your point, Kim. At years ago, he was younger man reaching out to a younger generation. Now he's very old, right? He's got to be 20 years older. So is he going to reach that younger market for wine because he's an older gentleman
yeah.
now?
Well,
He's
and do
energetic,
we
but
know like what is he like who is he trying to reach? Is he still trying to reach that 25-year-old who doesn't know anything about wine but wants to?
yeah, he's trying to reach, maybe he's trying to reach the new people over the years he
Yeah, he
marketed
missed the first
to.
time around.
Yeah, but he wants to sell. He definitely wants to sell
Oh.
wine, but it'll be interesting how he does.
And I think that that's also something that the younger generation is increasingly skeptical about. Like these younger age groups, like folks who are 30 and younger, they are extraordinarily skeptical about being sold to, about being marketed to, about I don't know, anything that if they get a whiff that you're trying to actually sell them something, they're going to
Yeah,
be like, yeah, I know the game is up.
yeah,
So, like, education is good and helping you be a better taster, consumer, whatever. Like, you can be a better consumer, but if you try to sell them, they're going to be right in your face about it. So, I think that's going to be very interesting if he's trying to segue the education in a way to get folks to spend their money. I don't know.
yeah,
It's going to
yeah. We'll
be
see.
interesting.
He's an interesting guy for sure.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get more information on Google about how big YouTube is in the wine world. And
Mm.
just a simple search, it went usually you get all sorts of hits, but one of the results was there was only like 17 top influencers that are on YouTube in the wine
Hmm.
world. And all duplicates of who we talked about, Wine Folly,
Yeah. And
Miss
I also
Vivino.
think it's hard to create content, video content in relation to wine that is engaging, that people will come back and maybe watch it over and over again. Like you can watch a goofy video about, I don't know, a dog falling into, I don't know,
Yeah,
mud
you can find
or
crazy stuff
something.
easier.
Yeah, that you can watch over and over and over again. So that thing gets multiple hits. But if you see one video telling you what to pair with your bottle of Pinot Noir, now you know it. You don't have to go back to it.
Yeah.
So I
And
think it's
and
because it's a different type of content.
like talking about content, every day I'm Googling wine news and I'm getting
Hmm.
automated reports of wine news stories. And within, say, 50 stories, there might be one YouTube related story in that,
Hmm.
which lets me think that maybe the YouTube indexing or something on the internet is not as good, or Google doesn't like it or
Ah, I
something.
see.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Because there's so many wine things being posted on YouTube. Why are those not picked up
Yeah.
or
Why aren't
trending?
you getting the hits that are telling you, hey, come look at this YouTube link?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm
Huh.
following, Google reports, all different types of trending reports I get daily to follow news.
If anybody would
And
be like on top of those things, it would be you because you spend like every day you do these searches where you try to find what is top of
just to
people's
keep up
minds
with
when it comes to
news.
wine. Yeah.
And it's very small amount that comes up in
Mm.
those reports, be it whatever media. It just doesn't detect it. And I know even for our show, if you just Google our show, the YouTube doesn't really come up in the top things as much as, our SoundCloud and all that other stuff, or Franklin TV or
But we also
whatever.
don't do video.
No, but it creates, like,
Yeah.
it uses your image as a video, so it's actually showing you something. Well,
Yeah.
and it has tags and everything else, so
I
it
know you
can't be
I know you do it well.
it can be
Better than me.
populated, but I just don't think it's found as easy.
Hmm.
I mean, I do follow it. I like that you can now get your YouTube, on your apps, on your TVs and stuff like that. They make it easier to watch things on it, but I usually just use it to how to do things around the house. But all the other people I follow is mostly on other social media than
Hmm.
YouTube, like you
Yeah, I
said.
have found that YouTube is really great for those other types of things. So, like if I don't know how to do something at a really beginner level, it's great. But like I said before, upper level things, not. It did teach me how to roll a really good baguette,
See,
I have to say.
I do it for household things, really. How do
YouTube
I
taught me to replace a toilet, which was pretty cool.
see? There you go. Yeah.
But not necessarily for wine or wine pairings. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. Hopefully, someone will come and create some good. If I would think if it was good to market to the younger audiences, these big brands. I didn't look, but I'm assuming like Gallo, are they on it? Like the big brands, is Barefoot have a YouTube channel, and
But then that
I,
makes me think, like, what would they do? Like, what
uh,
could Gallo possibly
to
put on
to get the
YouTube
younger audience.
that would make them appealing to a 27-year-old who,
Yeah.
finally has gotten a little foothold in their career. They have a little bit of money. They want to learn about wine. What the heck can Gallo offer on
Yeah. Maybe
YouTube?
that's why they don't do it.
Maybe. But again, I don't know if that's because there isn't a way or because the people who are doing marketing at Gallo are 40 years old and don't
Yeah.
necessarily,
Yeah.
or even older like I am,
And the
and
Gallo
don't
business
know how to.
model
Yeah,
was made
exactly.
by older generations,
Yeah.
so they didn't
So,
incorporate.
and maybe it just might be like, okay, what is going to be the next thing? Like, what is going to come after Instagram, YouTube, X? Like, what is the next social media platform that's going to have the biggest impact? And how can wine take a chunk of that and be applicable, I guess?
Well, we'll find out. We'll follow, and we'll
We
let the
will.
listeners know if there's anything new out there.
Because we're not going anywhere. So for the next 20 years, we shall see what is going on.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you're stuck with me.
There you go. It's all right. We have a lot to talk about.
Can you imagine in 20 years, you and I are still going to be doing this? Oh my God, I'm going to be so
Still
old.
talking wine.
Still talking
There'll
wine.
still be wine, that's for sure.
That is true. You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we are your hosts, Mark and Kim. You can find more information about Mark at franklinliquors.com and more information about myself at commonwealthwineschool.com. We are supported by Franklin Public Radio in Franklin, Massachusetts, and you can find our past episodes on SoundCloud and iTunes. And as always, you can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. So today, Mark and I have been talking about social media and specifically YouTube and content and where one can find information about wine. And we are going to pivot a little bit to talking about pricing and pricing increases and how that has affected the restaurant industry, and specifically how it has affected the wine list and what you can purchase, you the consumer, either by the bottle or by the glass. Now, we've all seen that prices have gone up pretty significantly over the last year, and that definitely has hit us in the wallet when it comes to wine at restaurants. I don't know how often you go out and get a glass of wine at a restaurant, Mark, but I have to say that when I go out, I tend to do beer at the bar because I really like to see what people have on tap, and it really has been something of a price increase recently.
Yeah, and what you said is exactly what's trending is people are kind of getting afraid of the wine list prices and are going to other beverages. So this was a story in Punch, and it was called Wait, the cheapest bottle on the wine list now costs how much?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, things are happening where things are going up. And in the past, we've talked about our tip in the restaurant wine list was you always kind of look at the second cheapest bottle
Right.
on the list.
Don't go with the
To be
cheapest, go
safe.
with the next one up. Yep.
Right. And they're saying, well, now let's look at that second cheapest bottle. And 10 years ago, you could find a bottle on the list for under $40. And this story was based in New York. And
Mm-hmm.
they're saying, why has the price has gone up so much that $45 and $40 bottle is now $80 on most lists. And they were saying, I think in 2016, the second cheapest bottle was between 40, was like $40 range. Now it's
Yeah.
$60. So they're kind of telling people, what's going on. You worked in the restaurant industry. I talked to people in the restaurant industry. Things are going up. Labor is going up.
Mm-hmm.
So to serve the wine costs more. The glasses cost more. So things have to go up.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I think when you're a wine drinker and you kind of have an understanding of when you go into a wine store and you see a particular wine that you're familiar with on the wine shelf and you see what it costs, you're like, okay, that wine cost $19.99 in a liquor store. And then you go into a restaurant and you see that that same bottle maybe is on the wine list for $55, $60 a bottle. You're like, what the heck? Like, I could literally go next door, buy that bottle of wine, bring it here, open it and drink it, and it would cost me nowhere near what it cost on this wine list because there are so many other associated costs with that bottle of wine that is not just the cost of the bottle of wine. And I think that that is really hard to swallow, even if you understand that it's like, it's the labor, it's the glassware, it's the storage. There's a lot of things that go into why a wine costs what it costs at a restaurant. And I think it's more and more becoming really difficult for consumers to swallow that that bottle of wine is really, really expensive on that wine list.
I'm glad you're talking about the cost because I have to pick your brain about this. In this article, they stated the typical markup is 3 to 4 times the cost the restaurant pays for the bottle.
Yep.
And I was always under the impression that it was 3 to 4 times the retail price. To me, that's not the same thing because the cost in a restaurant is
Right.
usually cheaper than the cost a retailer pays.
So I
which
think
one do you think
part of
it
it,
is?
yeah. So part of it depends on what is that wine's function on that restaurant wine list. Is it a by the glass wine or is it a by the bottle wine? And the prices can be different for those. So think about it this way. If you have a wine on your wine list that people can just get a glass of. So say at the beginning of the night, somebody orders a glass of Chardonnay X. You open a brand new bottle of Chardonnay X for people to have a glass of. That bottle cost you, the restaurant, $15 wholesale. Nobody else buys a glass of that Chardonnay X for the rest of the night. You really can't use that tomorrow. You can use it for cooking, but you really can't serve that again. If you are a restaurant that is cognizant of quality and freshness and serving a wine the way that it's supposed to be served, you probably are not going to be serving that the next day. So you have to eat the entire cost of that bottle with that first glass of wine that's been poured. So if you bought it for $15, you're probably selling that glass for, say, $12 a glass. So you're at least making up most of the cost of that wine. It's different for by the bottle. And yes, is it the situation where, well, chances are if you've got a bottle of Chardonnay open, more people are going to order it. If you have these obscure wines on your wine list, then you would only have them on the wine list if you're sure that your clientele would order them and you're not going to be wasting the whole bottle. Yes, I understand that and take that into account. But the general way that we figure the cost of a glass of wine for a by the glass list is that way. is to like, how much is it going to cost you to open this bottle and pour a glass of wine? And if you have to dump the rest of it out or cook with it, what is your loss for that? So I think that taking that into consideration is something that a lot of people just don't know about because it's not something that you necessarily think about when you go out to eat at a restaurant.
Right. And that was a great intro to the second article we wanted to talk about, Kim, that was in VinePair. Do restaurants really price a glass of wine for what they paid for the entire bottle? So you just summarized that. And the bottom line
I
in
didn't
that
really mean to.
article,
It just kind of,
no, that
it
worked
just
out
it kind of came
perfectly
out.
because that what they're saying is when people want something by the glass, this is the second thing next to buying the second cheapest
Yeah.
bottle, is people always say you're getting ripped off if you're buying by the glass. People feel ripped off if they know they're buying a Kendall Jackson Chardonnay by the glass, say, for $15 when they can buy a bottle for that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they mentioned all these things of what they do to try to get people from not feeling ripped off and how they price things by the glass. And like you mentioned, a lot of it had to do with if they open a bottle, what is the freshness? Will it
Mm-hmm.
last? How long will it last? And that's what they decide what to put on the by the glass list. But there's a lot of other thinking behind that people should know. Most of the time, those wines that they use are house wines that you probably don't know what they are. They're wines that might be exclusive to them, restaurant only
That
wines.
depends on the restaurant, though.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of times they do that so you don't feel like you're getting ripped off. But if they do put that Kendall Jackson Chardonnay at $15 a glass, like Kim said, that is why they do it. There's cost associated to that for you to enjoy that glass of wine. So, I mean, there's a few ways to look at it. And I was thinking, Kim, when I heard this whole thing about opening the bottle, keeping it fresh. With wine kegs now, wine preservation systems, the Coravin, which we talked about, I would think it would be much easier to do a wine by the glass program.
But it depends on the restaurant. The restaurants have to invest in that other type of service in order for that to be something that is part of their rotation. It's really expensive to have a whole bunch of wines under Coravin. It's really
Right.
expensive to change up your whole system so that you can actually serve kegged wines. Like
Staff trainings.
it's not just it's like staff trainings, but it's also the actual like service taps and stuff for kegged wine. And then there's a limited amount of wine in keg that you can serve. So it's not just, hey, here are these options, let's do it. What I think is something that is beneficial for a very robust wine by the glass list where you have things open that might not necessarily all go in the same evening is that if the manager or the owner has created a culture in the restaurant where the servers are allowed to give little tastings to people, like saying, oh, you're kind of on the fence about getting a whole glass of this, let me bring you a taste. They've already got the bottle open. They can give you an ounce. Why not? I feel like
Right.
that's something that it plays to. You've already got bottles open and it's hospitality. You're giving diners something that they didn't necessarily expect, that they don't either that they're really not paying for, and they're giving options, and not only options for choosing what is on the list, but now they have tasted them. And so now they get to choose between A, B, and C, and it gives them more of a feeling of power that they are like, oh, okay, I'm actually going to enjoy this thing that I have ordered. So I think little things like that can be very, very powerful in a restaurant setting.
Do you think people are getting turned off by the prices and going to things like beer or martinis?
So I think that
Like,
I think this started to happen kind of right at the beginning of the pandemic, where it was less about ordering a glass of wine, because if you saw wine on a wine list and you know that your going out is a super special thing because it's like, hey, COVID, we're only going to do this maybe once every 3 or 4 months because we don't necessarily want to go out and be around people, you know that you can go to the liquor store that same exact enjoyed it. But a cocktail that the person behind the bar is really good at making cocktails and you can't do that at home, Like you can make a cocktail at home, but you might not be able to make that cocktail at home. I feel like that is such a value add. And yes, that cocktail might be expensive. And sure, it might cost, I don't know how much more to actually get that cocktail at a restaurant as opposed to making it at home. It's the show, it's the expertise, it's the quality of the ingredients. It's just the mastery that goes into having somebody who really can make a good cocktail and make it for you. I feel like that has so much value. And this is coming from the beer and wine lady, not the cocktail lady. But I feel like that was something that really shifted during COVID. It's like, okay, I can buy something and bring it home, but this is something that another human being has to make for me that I can't do as well myself. And that was a little bit of something that was lost during the pandemic when we really lost a lot of our contact with other people. So I feel like the value of a really well-made cocktail was really raised in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah. And I see that trending a lot when I go out to restaurants. The cocktail list really overpowers the wine list now, and people are focusing on buying those specialty drinks. One of the things I want to ask you, Kim, it happened to me recently in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
I got a wine and it was in a huge glass and it had a 1 ounce or half ounce, 1.5 ounce pour, right?
What?
My question to you is this. What turns you off more when you're getting a wine by the glass? It's in a big glass and it's a small pour, or it's in a small glass with a small pour.
They're only giving you 1.5 ounces in a wine glass?
It looked like 1.5 ounces because the
Okay.
glass was so huge. So that's my question.
I know what you mean.
I feel more ripped off when I understand the whole thing about the glassware, but I just wish if it was half the size of the glass, it would have made the pour look.
So it's all your perception, right?
Correct.
Did you say, like, did you give me enough wine?
No, that was the way they served. I was looking around at all the other tables. Everybody's pour was exactly the same. But
so you're assuming that you got 5 ounces of wine in that glass, right?
I don't even think it was that. But
well, that's a problem. I mean, it's one thing if the glass is so big that your perception of the wine is that they're.
But that's the thing, because I thought it was just me, and then the table next to me made the same comment. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm seeing it, this person's seeing it, I think they should really take into account the glasses are too big. You know,
I think that's actually, I think that's a different question. It's more, it's kind of twofold. It's like the glasses is number one, the glass too big? And so it makes people feel like they're not getting their full amount. But also number two, maybe they're not actually getting their full amount. So yeah. I mean, if it's a small glass and they give me a lot of wine, I just feel like I'm at, some sort of cheap trattoria in East Boston where I'm just getting a glass of wine with my pizza and they fill it to the top. And it's like, okay, this is just whatever cheap Chianti that's going with my my margarita. Yeah, but I don't know. I think I would rather have a small glass and know that I got enough wine.
Yeah.
But again, it's all perception. But if you and other people around you felt like the restaurant was not doing its duty when it came to hospitality of making you feel like you got what you ordered, then yes, that's a problem.
Good.
I mean, I don't care how beautiful those big glasses were. If you serve somebody, and there are wine glasses out there that can literally fit an entire bottle of wine, but you don't need a glass that can hold 26 ounces of wine if you're only getting 5 ounces of wine. Because you're right, it's going to look like it's like a shot glass full of wine in that glass. So
I think the other thing that happened was getting a mimosa in a stemless glass, so it didn't look like, and it wasn't full, so it was almost like I've never had a mimosa served that way. But whatever, I don't get out much, I guess.
You're just gonna have to message me what this restaurant was so that I can stay away.
Yeah. I will.
Oh my goodness.
So that's a couple of things.
But it all kind of comes down to hospitality, right? So, it's doing right by the customer as well as making sure that your business succeeds. So sometimes it's a real fine line. And I sympathize both with the consumer side of it. We want to make sure that when we go out to a meal, we get our money's worth. And on the other side of it, I want to make sure that small businesses who are running restaurants can be able to stay in business. So yeah, it's not easy for anybody these days.
Yeah, it's tough. But like you said, you're going out for a night of enjoyment and you like wine, enjoy the wine. Don't get nervous or feel like they're ripping you off. You're paying for a service. You're paying for that special treat, right? And I do that when I go on vacation. I splurge.
Yeah. So it's not just the cost of the wine. It's all of the associated things as well.
Right. Thank you for joining us today on The Wonderful World of Wine. We are your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. For more information about Kim, you can go to her website, commonwealthwineschool.com. For more information about myself, you can go to franklinliquors.com. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio. You can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. Our past episodes are on SoundCloud and iTunes. Cheers.
Why,